back, boxing fans, to another great show with Sean on boxing. Today's morning boxing talk. So obviously I did not go live for this big UK event last night. Living in Taiwan, it starts really early. The fight was over before 6 o'clock a.m. my time, so it's an all-nighter in a sense. So it's not easy to go live for these kind of fights. But what made it worse is when I tried to buy DAZN, they wouldn't let me buy again. The same thing, of course, that happened for the Canelo Alvarez fight. So at that point, I was just like, whatever. I was in bed listening to the fight card on my phone, and then I woke up, watched the AJ fight, and I'm shocked and sort of surprised to hear from a lot of these channels after the fight discussing and talking about how they're so shocked and surprised that Anthony Joshua got stopped by Daniel Dubois, and acting as if nobody was talking about this fight, as if this was a possibility. And leading into this fight, I thought I saw lots of people talking about how AJ had been in with poor competition leading up to this fight. Well, of course, Daniel Dubois had been in with really good competition and had looked excellent. So people felt like he was the guy that actually was kind of on a better place in his career at that point. Obviously, both of them coming back after career losses, devastating losses, and after dealing with a lot of mental stuff to get back to the top. The one thing, of course, people were addressing with regards to AJ was the work with the new trainer, and how confident and how good and improved he looked under the new trainer, and that, you know, obviously this was an important thing. He'd been through many trainers, he'd been going to the States, he'd been trying to find, you know, that missing piece, and you know, people felt like, oh, finally he found it, right, with a UK trainer, a guy that could relate to him, a guy that had him really doing things properly, technically improving him and going back to what really you do as a boxer, which is box. Use your jab, pick your spots, not allow yourself to be defensively open to big counters. But still, even with all that said, people still felt that this was a 50-50 fight. At least I did in the multiple videos I made talking about this, and the fact that I thought it should be getting a lot more attention, and the fact that this was a legitimate 50-50 fight that people should be talking about, because as I said on my channel, anything could happen in this fight. I felt that AJ could win easily if he was able to box and move and establish his jab, and then eventually stop Daniel Dubois by catching him with something clean, since Daniel Dubois is hittable and defensively is not the best fighter out there, even though he is tough and a strong guy. And considering his mental situation, we weren't sure exactly, you know, how Daniel would hold up mentally if the fight got tough. But in saying that, we also knew that AJ was vulnerable. He was chinny, mentally a little fragile, and at a point of his career where, you know, we feel like he's back to where he needed to be, but seeing is believing, right? And unfortunately for him, we saw exactly what happened and what unfolded. AJ got bumped up in that fight, pushed back on his back foot, was being out-jabbed by Dubois, and was the one out of the two that seemed to be more affected by punches that were being landed. AJ got blocked early on the first round, and at that point, it was pretty clear what people always worry about when they talk about Anthony Joshua. That mentally and physically, he's fragile. And I'm a big AJ fan. Obviously, going into this fight, I was hoping that he was going to be able to do what we thought he could do. Establish the jab and eventually walk Daniel Dubois into a big right hand and stop him. But at the end of the day, what we ended up seeing was what we saw before. Him land big power, hurt his opponent, just like he did against Andy Ruiz, only to then go in, try to finish him recklessly, and get countered and stopped. And that's exactly what happened in this fight as well. You know, he went in after having Daniel Dubois really obviously hurt, and then once again went in too crazily, got caught, and that was the end of the fight, right? And this begs the question, you know, during training with his new trainer, what are they doing? How do they go into fights if they don't understand their weaknesses and how they need to fight to stay away from these kind of things, right? And when you get a guy hurt, and this has happened multiple times, not bum rushing him and walking into big shots, which also is something you figure they would have addressed and he would be cognizant of. Like, he went in there and threw an uppercut to try to get him out, and thus leaving himself wide open to a beautiful counter shot. And I asked myself when I saw that, what the fuck, man? Like, how would you ever think that this was the punch at that point of time that you should be throwing? What you should be doing was throwing stiff jabs and then throwing right hands and leaving your hook after that, after you land the shots, right? So that you are protected. And going into this fight, even in the first rounds, his defense looked very suspect, right? His hands were very low, just allowing an overhand right to eventually drop him in the first round. And who could be surprised? Not me. I don't think anybody could have been surprised seeing the way he approached that fight and the way he was fighting in that round, with his hands down and just basically advertising that, you know, if you throw an overhand right, sure, eventually you're going to catch me in the temple. The same thing apparently you did in sparring with me that knocked me out. And so I'm going to allow you that opportunity once again. I know that they're talking about a rematch, but at this point, I think what would be the point of a rematch? I don't think there's a chance in hell that Anthony Joshua is going to come back and be better. We saw what he did in the Andy Ruiz rematch. He won, but that's more because Andy Ruiz is not a guy that came out aggressive, was not able to take advantage of the opportunities that were in front of him. A vulnerable, fragile mentally Anthony Joshua. Daniel Dubois is not going to do that. He's going to come out, bum rush him in the same fashion he did this fight, and probably stop AJ inside 3 rounds. And at that point, that would be a devastating end of your career kind of loss. For me, it makes more sense right now to see AJ potentially fight Fury if Fury gets beat by Usyk, as many people are predicting. I feel Fury is going to probably win the rematch, but we will see. You never know in boxing how things are going to unfold. And I would like to see Daniel Dubois fight Joseph Parker. I think Daniel Dubois, Joseph Parker, obviously it's a good fight. It sells well in the UK. UK boxing fans are very familiar with Joseph Parker. Parker's coming off of some very good performances. Stylistically, he's not always the most exciting fighters, but against Daniel Dubois, I don't think that's going to be an issue. Just the way Daniel Dubois fights, I think the fight cannot not be an exciting fight. He's going to pressure, push, and make it a very tough fight for Joseph Parker. But for Parker, I think this is a great opportunity for him, a big fight. He's earned it, so he might as well get the opportunity to see if he can do what Hrgović and Anthony Joshua were unable to do, which is beat the bully. And that's really what Daniel Dubois has become right now. He's pretty much taken over, I think, right now, as the best UK heavyweight in boxing. And that shows you the depth and quality that the UK heavyweights have. The fact that basically you lose an Anthony Joshua, which happens, right? Guys' careers end, and then you follow up with a guy who potentially could go on to have maybe not a more lucrative or better career, but potentially could be a more dominant UK heavyweight. And really at this point, I don't know if there's too many fighters out there who I can see beating Daniel Dubois, in all honesty, because he's a simple guy, you know, simple-minded, but that's perfect for what his job is, a boxer. I don't think mentally he thinks too much. He doesn't let this kind of stuff get to him. And in the long run, that's probably the best thing anybody could ask. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace out. Leave your comments below. Remember to like, subscribe, and share.